Fresh Air Production.
2020 is the year of the podcast, much like 2019, 2018, 2017 and 2016. We made our first branded podcast in 2005, but no one was listening back then. Then they came back around 2014, and now they're huge. Everybody seems to want one. But how do you actually create a good podcast, and how do you make sure it works? Welcome to Fresh Ears from Fresh Air Production. I'm Neil Cowling, the founder of Fresh Air, and in this series we deconstruct a branded podcast project to see what we and you can learn from it. We speak to the client and the producer to talk through how it all came together. And today we're going to talk about one of the most unusual podcasts we've made. Partly because each episode is only a few minutes long, partly because some episodes are aimed at children, and partly because some of them are in French. It's Zendium's 2 Minutes of Zen.
My name is Steph Ellswood and I am a food lover, dancer and personal trainer. Today we will spend 2 minutes exploring how you can add strength training into your brushing routine to strengthen your mouth, your mind and your body. After all, it's a simple way of making your 2 minutes of brushing even more valuable. A quick and easy way to strength train your body and mouth is to do a wall sit as you brush. This type of exercise will improve circulation, not just to your lower body, but also to your mouth too.
So why would a podcast be of interest to a toothpaste brand? And what can you possibly engage people with for 2 minutes? So I'm joined by Paul Bartley, the Global Marketing Director at Unilever, who are the parent company for Zendium, and Alex Kenning, the producer for the project here at Fresh Air. I should also say that for the first part of the project, I produced it myself, so I'll get involved here as well. Paul, welcome. Thank you for coming on. Can you start by explaining what Zendium is, please?
Zendium is a brand that does mouth health products, so toothpaste, toothbrushes, mouthwash, which has been actually running in Scandinavia for decades, but it's not that known outside until now. It leverages one thing which is very, very interesting, which is the microbiome science, to develop products which are actually effective for having a healthy mouth, but do it in a way that then respects and boosts your good microbiome in mouth. And that is instead of actually sterilizing, which is something which perpetuates a weakness in your mouth. So it's a natural action. It works rebalancing and reinforcing basically your saliva, which is your first body line of defense in the mouth. And for us as a marketing team, it's almost a diamond in the rough for a marketeer to get it out there and explain it to other countries.
And so it's important for you coming into the UK to explain the whole concept behind the toothpaste, not, that's your point of difference, I guess, rather than just saying it's another toothpaste in the market.
Exactly. So we use many times the word purpose in our organization, but at the end, basically, is why the brand exists, and the brand in particular, Zendium, exists to bring this well-being and health through actually balancing your body rather than fighting against it. And so that's what we try to communicate in every single point that we use.
Where does the concept of Zen come from? Again, is that sort of core part of the brand purpose? Is it just a good play on the name of Zendium? How does that work?
Oh, of course, it's a good play on the name. We're happy to start with Zen, but again, Zen is a concept of balancing, which works very well actually with product and the product truth, how it works, and also with what interests do people have that actually we can step in as a brand and talk about. So we talk about balancing your health, balancing your body to be stronger, to boost your natural defenses. All that is encompassed on a notion of balancing or Zen in this case, to make it more catchy.
So I should explain as best I can to the listeners what the concept of the podcast is of 2 Minutes of Zen. In essence, this is a podcast that you listen to whilst brushing your teeth. It's only a couple of minutes long. The original series was presented by health influencers or health experts in different types of activity, from yoga through to sort of general mental wellness. And the idea was that you take this dead time, essentially, for where you're brushing your teeth, where you would otherwise be staring at the mirror or whatever you do while you're brushing your teeth, and you take that dead time to learn something or do an exercise or have some sort of moment of mindfulness, that sort of thing that can otherwise occupy that time. And I guess my understanding of it from when you first approached this was that you felt that podcasting worked well because your ears are sort of free at that point. It's a way of engaging people when they would otherwise just be doing nothing other than brushing their teeth.
Exactly. It's a do-nothing moment. And sometimes brushing teeth actually is penalized by that because it's actually a chore many times. And we thought that bringing some content that you could play alongside it could actually improve a healthy habit, which is for you brushing your teeth. And by doing so, also, it can help us as a brand to talk about the things that matter to us. Again, how you can live healthier, how you can balance your own body and your health. And that was the whole intent behind 2 minutes of Zen.
Was there a moment, because I get the impression there are a lot of sort of marketing brainstorms going on at the moment where somebody says, let's have a podcast, as a sort of, throw an idea at the wall. Was there a moment where you suddenly came up with the idea of the podcast, where someone suggested it?
Well, actually, as many things in marketing starts by trying, not that we woke up one day and said, yeah, podcast is the thing. It's really the effort of the Zendio marketing team in this case. They were curious to try new formats, channels that are a bit less cluttered than traditional channels that would be for us social, Instagram, Facebook feeds. And instead realized that there is people out there talking about what matters to us, which is again this Zen, or this balancing your health, how you can strengthen your body, and that we could collaborate. And one of these collaborations in particular was with Dr. Chatterjee, which happens to have a very successful podcast now. And we started years ago with him with his own podcast. We realized that this was a very good channel for what we needed, which is we got a very special message about balancing your health, balancing your microbiome, how microbiome is important in your health, and how mouth connects with your overall body health. And instead of using channels which are very, very fast-paced, very cluttered, we felt that instead podcast was allowing us more freedom, more depth of connection with the audience, and that was definitely the choice. Then from that first initial test that was successful, we said that's an interesting space, that's an interesting channel. And alongside communicating and using, as you call them, experts or influencers within the space, it's also good that we start creating our own content, which in this case, fitting it to the moment of brushing, we felt it was easier than just speaking out there for and competing with the very good people that has podcast channels right now.
And I remember you giving those influencers and those experts pretty much free rein, really. You said it needs to fit into 2 minutes, and we gave them a bit of a brief. And I remember there being, we want to do balance, and we want to do microbiome, and we want to do mindfulness, and we picked experts who were big in those fields. But essentially, you gave those talent 2 minutes to do whatever they liked with, really, didn't you?
Yes, that was essential in the brief. I think, first of all, a good brief is always short and very clear. And in this case, that it links to what the brand stands for, what the brand is interested in, and the reason for this brand to exist. You don't have to explain much or they do a very precise brief as you would do with a commercial. That would be completely the opposite effect. We were looking for authenticity. We share a common belief with these experts, and that was enough. Then each one is an expert on its own field, and we told them, do your own interpretation of how you can actually do good for your health and your body while you're brushing.
And so you did a couple of series of essentially adults and experts and influencers using those 2 minutes. And then in the most recent one, you've aimed it at children. And we've got 2 episodes for under 7s, one of which is for the morning and one's for the evening, and one's for 7 to 12-year-olds, again, morning and evening. And any parent knows what a nightmare it is to get kids to brush their teeth. So it seems like a great idea to me. Why did you decide to move from having adult content to content for kids?
First, because of a need. We are, in parallel to this, to our podcast and our content, we are also partnering with NGOs like Children with Cancer in the UK to help those the little ones when they're going through very intense, difficult moments for their health, to also keep up with their good oral health, good mouth health. And because of that partnership, we realized that to help kids to brush and to brush well, there is always education needed to be done, and education can be a bit boring for kids. So instead, if we played it in a fun way, in a way that then they learn themselves how to reach all the areas in their mouth, do it in a respectful way with their mouths, in a fun way, we can actually improve their habits alongside the work that we do for adults, which of course is more about what else can you do with those 2 minutes that are a chore. For this one is more educational, and make it accessible for parents and kids in a moment. Again, if you think about evening brushing, which tends to be the one you skip, it's not a moment that you want to put your kid with a lot of technology in between. So audio and voice LED content is less intrusive, less time of screen for kids compared to other things that they can do, watching a video. It felt very natural, and therefore we said let's expand the 2 minutes of Zen into kids as well.
It sounds great. I mean, just from my 10-year-old, absolutely loved it, and we have all the same normal challenges that any parent has of trying to get teeth done. Alex Kenning is from the Fresh Air team, and Alex's job was to make this kids content come alive. It was about the most sound effect packed piece of work we've ever produced. Can you just describe it from your point of view, Alex, of how much stuff you packed in there?
Yeah, there was a huge amount of sound effects in there. I actually spent a long time digging through the wonders of the internet, finding these sound effects. Luckily, I wasn't forced to make any of them myself, although at one point I was trying to find the right air when someone opens their mouth, and I did resort to asking my 13-year-old niece.
They come in handy, don't they, children, when you need a sound effect?
They really certainly do. But yeah, it was just about really finding the right sounds for what we were going for. Obviously, some are quite easy, the boing of a bouncing ball, or maybe the sound of a cat. Although there's lots of different versions of a cat sound. And then things which are a bit more difficult to portray, like the sound of, there's a bit in the script which is the icky, sticky bits get going as you're brushing your teeth. So it was how to portray that kind of imagery. And I went for some footsteps and just, turned it down in volume, basically, so it just sounds like the steps are walking away. So I was able to get quite creative with that. But yeah, certainly very grateful for the internet to find all of these sounds.
Staying on the top, swap over to the other side. Can you meow like a kitty cat? That helps us reach inside. Brushing our teeth helps stop the garden weeds growing. And a little blob of toothpaste makes sure any sticky, icky bits get going.
And actually, it's interesting as a creative process, because with all podcasts, our clients give us a certain amount of creative leeway, I suppose. But with this one, can you describe the script you were given? You were essentially given a script with descriptions of the sound effects that you needed to find, but apart from that, it was left up to you, wasn't it?
It completely was, yes. Yeah. So obviously, the script is what the Gemma who recorded it, she ran through that, and we spent quite a long time trying to get that right and amending that just so it sounded natural. And then when it came to the creative process around it, we did have some direction, and which was great because I didn't actually speak very much to the client, certainly beforehand, and it was great that they actually had an idea of what they wanted. And then once I sent them that first draft, essentially they did come back with some really great feedback, because it actually, although it looked in the first script there was quite a few sound effects, we found there just wasn't actually very many at all in comparison when you actually listen to it. So they came back with some more detailed feedback again, which I found really useful, just because they were clear about what they wanted. I mean, I'm really pleased with how it came out in the end, and I think they are too.
And Pauwaan, what constitutes success from something like this? Is it a direct sales question? Is it an overall brand awareness, brand perception? What role does the podcast play in your overall strategy?
Podcast as a channel has different objectives, I would say. When we aim to connect directly to sale, then we leverage an appearance into an existing known popular podcast channel, right? So that would be the example of I was saying before with Dr. Chatterjee. And that we see that it has actually very good connection into KPI metrics of sale, for instance. In this in particular, for 2 Minutes of Zen, it was more about creating a relevant content that engages with audience. So we're looking into how many views do we get, how people is engaging with it, and our intention was to develop this hub of content that then we can use it as a source of expertise for the brand. So it's not, even if we are a known brand, and in our case, we're not known, and we want to step into a territory which is very rich, like well-being, health, strengthening your health, we need to have these pieces of content that bring us credibility out there. That says, first, you're an expert on what you talk. You also collaborate with people that know on their field, and then you engage with the audience on that particular field. I think we are here for a bit of a long-term game with this type of content. And our KPIs are always more related to, is that content engaging? Is that content building what you stand as a brand?
And does it perform a purpose of also bringing you awareness with those influencers? I suppose when we're approaching people to take part in the adult ones, and we're approaching health and wellness influencers, you're actually building a connection by inviting them to contribute, aren't you?
Absolutely. And I think that's why internally we are, letting go of using the word influencer, and we more go with the one, Neil, you were talking initially about experts and partners for us. So instead of taking a short-term view into influencers, that you would use them for a campaign, in particular, here we are with partners that we can develop a piece of content in the shape of 2 Minutes of Zen, that then we can appear in their own channels talking about the same topic, which is big enough to be constantly appearing in different spaces. We can appear in their channels. We can do a piece of communication together as well on other channels of our own, like social. And I think that builds that virtuous circle that then the brand is less intrusive as a piece of advertisement and is understood more as a brand of trust for their audience, a brand that is there because there's a common belief shared. And so, again, like in the 2 Minutes of Zen, like on all these activities, we're more thinking long-term partnerships rather than looking into the short-term return of a specific campaign.
So you've done special episodes of someone like Rangan Chatterjee, of their podcast itself. You've made your own podcast. The other thing that I know you do is you place advertising with Acast, and you work with Acast so that you buy brand sponsorships. Do you also buy audio adverts as well with Acast? How does your partnership with Acast work?
Yes, we do all these steps that you said. So again, depending on what is our marketing objective, if we want to do reach, massive reach, then we buy advertisement spaces within podcasts, because we still feel that is a channel where, especially for small brands, like in this case, Zendium in the UK, it's a channel that is very useful for these brands to connect in an authentic way with the audience. Even when you do advertisement, it's less cluttered, so you have more chances to stand out. So definitely with Acast, we do these and then measure what is the millions of impressions that we get into their podcasts. How do they come back to us, as in shape of traffic into our own content. Of course, there's one thing which is easy to do, which is to track the actions that come as a result of your appearance into a podcast. So you can track entries into your website, sales of your product, even sales of our products. If we, in this case, we connected it very well with our DTC shop. So we can give to the different podcasts a code, and through that code we know how many of them are coming from each one of the partners. And there is a second aspect of it, which is the branded awareness that you get out of those appearances. And that is where we found that it was very empty space. Yes, because the channel is very young, and also because of the limitations of the audio. But we have partnered with our market research team even to do some ad hoc research that could prove that for us, every time we were investing into one of these podcasts together with Acast, we would get our brand awareness lifted in the audience of the podcast. It's difficult. We did a first attempt because normally we tend to measure that, for other channels which are broader. So it's hard to get the people that is actually listening a particular podcast. But through that, we got a good experience, and we saw that the ones that were more close to, in terms of message of what we talk from the brand side, and again, linked to that purpose or shared purpose, they were helping us higher on brand awareness than others. But the measurement is, of course, a challenge.
And have you had particular podcast presenters who are particularly good for you at those presenter endorsements, at those presenter reads?
Yeah, not only in the UK. I mean, of course, the example of Chatterjee that I said, because naturally he's talking about gut health, overall well-being, holistic well-being, and living better. But every time we found a podcast that talks about that, I think that's where we get the link. We also had very good results in Norway and Sweden with, again, podcasts that talk about well-being. And then we see that all the metrics, even click-throughs after airing into our own channels are going higher. When the podcasts are a bit more generic, they'll fail a bit more on this, or they are more about, say, sports only. Then we see that we don't get that good connection with metrics like sale, metrics like clicks or visits into our own website, and brand lifting.
So I mentioned up top that the other thing we did was translate these kids ones into French, which I think is probably something we've not done before. Why France? Why the market? And why particularly these ones did you think of translating them?
France is another market where we are starting to launch the brand, and the content is equally relevant for French kids. We do the same activities there, and for us it was quite logical to have it also in French. Of course, it is always a challenge because you need to translate it, and we had one idea. It was simple translation that would make it available for French users, and we see that they are already picking it up, and we would love to do that with more content that we have.
Alex, how was that from a production point of view?
That was a good one for me personally, because I am actually fluent in French. So I'm not sure if you knew that before.
I didn't even know that. No,
you started.
That was jammy.
It was very, very lucky and fortuitous. For me, that was a good one to do because I can speak French. And in terms of the creative process behind it, the team had actually translated the script. So we did some work and found a really, really great French voiceover artist who recorded the lines, and then it wasn't quite as easy as just, replacing the English for French, simply because of the timing. Some of the phrases, just, the way that they're expressed in French take a little bit longer to say than in English. And then also some of the sound effects did also need to be either taken out or just switched around because some of the words just didn't translate word for word. I found that quite enjoyable in a strange way. And
have you enjoyed it? Has it been fun? Is it something you look forward to as a brand to doing? Yes,
it is. And I think as marketeers, I would say the last decade since TV was king and then social came in, we've always been very, very much obsessed with video content. And that's absolutely great because it's so versatile in ways to engage with audience that, of course, makes a lot of sense. But somehow marketing teams are not that familiar with content which is created to be used as audio and listened. It was a very good learning curve for the team. Sometimes we felt that we, for instance, on the most advertisement pieces, we were trying to fit everything because we had 20 seconds and you could say this claim and that claim and that claim. And it became like a list of eternal list of, all the advertisement in TV. And since then, we started curating what is the most important thing to say it also in a way that is engaging. So we're learning a lot to meet those partners and experts and talk about a topic which actually interests both. That for us is much more interesting than simply putting a piece of communication out there. So definitely we're learning and we're enjoying it.
Alex, just back to you for a second, because you're a audio nut like I am. You're a music lover, DJ, producer, everything else. What do you think the essence of a great branded podcast is for you? How does it grab people? How does it work?
My background definitely is, specialist music and being a music producer and a DJ myself. And at the same time, I've always loved radio. So the thing about a radio show is that it's so personal, right? And it, you can play the same radio show to 10 different people and it will conjure up 10 different images. I think really certainly from an audience point of view, I think what makes a great branded podcast is something that's not a sales pitch and something that adds value to the conversation, because especially nowadays there's so much out there. So I think something that is going to capture the imagination of a listener, and ideally something that hasn't been done before. Pau,
apart from the data that you've got and the sort of normal marketing tools that you have, what sort of anecdotal feedback have you had on the kids one particularly? Because we've got the feeling that suddenly it's persuaded our kids to brush their teeth or at least entertain them while they're doing it. Have you had good anecdotal feedback from people?
Well, so far on this one, the anecdotes go more from the team, whether if they used it with their kids. I used it with my own kids, and they were very, very focused on actually and concentrated. I was like impressed. Because otherwise they don't stop moving. And for a time, it was like, again, a time of zen and pause, and they were concentrated on trying, listening, going up and down in the different parts of the mouth. So, never underestimate the power of a good tale for a kid. Is the way to keep them, standing and concentrated.
It's a good tip for the future. And so to finish off, any advice, any tip, for other marketeers who are listening to this, anyone who's thinking of using podcasts in the way that you guys so enthusiastically have, what tips, what advice would you have for them at this point?
I would say first, if you are thinking, and if we talk about our own podcast channel, I would definitely think about it rather than a campaign and something tactical. Think about it as content and a more always on mindset. So don't go there tactically. Go there with the intent of trying, testing, yes, but building. I would say also as an important point, you need to talk from what is relevant, for you as a brand, from your what we call the purpose, but basically what is the brand essence, what the brand stands for, to make it authentic. And again, from there, find people that share these beliefs and build authentic content. I think authenticity here is super important because, again, you're talking about a channel that will compete with a lot of different content. So it needs to come and be relevant for you as a brand, be relevant for the audience, but be authentic. And in that sense, I agree with you, Alex, that making it different is important. For us, the notion of linking it to the brushing moment, it was a way to make it as well unique. Because otherwise, what is the point of having that channel if you could actually host the content somewhere else? So find that nugget that will make it stand out a bit. Think about it before you start. Luckily, in this case, my team got with this great idea of the 2 minutes of Zen, and it was a good place to position it. Definitely use it alongside the ecosystem of content that you have. Don't leave it there alone. then promote it outside if you want to make, a bit of virtuous circle of that content helping you.
Paolo Bartoli, Global Marketing Director at Unilever, Alex Kenning, the producer on the project here at Fresh Air. Thank you very much. It's been really, really interesting to talk to you. And if you want to find out how Fresh Air might be able to help you create a fantastic podcast for your brand, please do get in touch. We're at freshairproduction.co.uk. In the meantime, I'm Neil Cowling. Thank you very much for listening.